So while much of the world seems to be drifting towards the authoritarian right, people in Eastern European countries like Serbia and Romania are pushing back hard against that trend. They're flooding the streets, demanding accountability, and calling for real change. It's emotional, unpredictable, and could shape the future of the region. Let's start with Serbia. Over the past week, massive crowds, possibly as many as 300,000 people, have taken to the streets in what are the country's biggest protests ever. Students, farmers, veterans, city workers, you name it. They have all gathered in Belgrade, rallying around the parliament and presidential buildings. At the heart of this movement is a demand for transparency and reform, but really what set things off was tragedy. Last November, a newly renovated train station canopy in Novi Sad suddenly collapsed, killing 15 people. It was supposed to be a symbol of progress, part of a modernization project tied to China's Belt and Road Initiative. Instead, it became a symbol of government failure and Chinese corner cutting. People blamed corruption, shoddy contracts, and a total lack of proper oversight. Smaller protests had been bubbling up ever since, but this past weekend, everything boiled over. Now, Serbia's Prime Minister Milos Vucevic officially resigned this week, even though he had first said he would be back in January. The delay in his resignation didn't help the government's credibility, especially with so many people already angry. President Alexander Vucic says that if a new government doesn't form soon, there will be new elections in June. But a lot of people are seeing that as a mechanism to buy time, to let things cool off, not actually as a real solution. And this frustration in Serbia runs deep. Vucic has been in power for over a decade, and critics say he has tightened his grip in ways that feel a lot like what we've seen in Hungary under Viktor Orban, or even early on in Russia under Vladimir Putin. In response to these protests, he claims that it's all a foreign plot. He's even called it a Western imported revolution in an interview with Donald Trump Jr., but there is zero evidence of that. Meanwhile, the situation on the ground is tense. Riot police are guarding key buildings, and pro-government groups, including some tied to militias and football hooligans, have made their presence known. There's even been a few disturbing incidents as a car hit protesters, and there was a strange loud bang during a moment of silence. The protests are mostly peaceful though, but people are on edge. Internationally, reactions are mixed. The European Union and the United Nations are urging calm, but some European lawmakers are taking a stronger stance. Several members of the European Parliament wrote to EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, asking her to cancel a meeting with Vucic and take a harder line. They say the EU has been turning a blind eye to Serbia's democratic backsliding and needs to stand with the protesters. Could this turn into another color revolution? I'm not sure. But also we are seeing a similar situation in Romania. Over the weekend, tens of thousands of Romanians marched in Bucharest, not in protest of a single leader like in Serbia, but in defense of their country's direction. They were reacting to the annulment of the December 2024 presidential election, which was thrown out over concerns about Russian interference. That sparked a surge in far-right anti-EU sentiment, but most Romanians aren't buying it. Polls show that 60 to 70% of Romanians still support staying in the European Union. The mood in Romania was passionate but calm. People carried signs that said things like unity and respect, Europe gives us rights, and no to Russia. It wasn't about confronting the government, it was about making sure their country stays on a democratic pro-European path. So in a way, you've got two countries facing different versions of the same struggle. Serbia is in the middle of a heated, messy fight against corruption and creeping authoritarianism. Romania is trying to head off a far-right turn before it gains real power. One is boiling over, the other is being more proactive, but both are reminders that people still care deeply about their voices, their rights, and the future of their democracies. What happens next is hard to predict. In Serbia, if Vucic cracks down or refuses to budge, things could get worse fast. He has a lot of power, but not so much that he's untouchable. A misstep, especially one involving violence, could unite the opposition in a way that we haven't seen yet in Serbia. Romania's path looks steadier for now, but with elections coming up in May, there's a lot at stake. If the pro-European majority holds strong, the country could stay on course. But if its far-right gains traction, it could start drifting towards the kind of nationalism we're seeing in Hungary. So here we are, Serbia on the edge of a potential crisis, Romania at a political crossroads. Both countries are wrestling with big questions about leadership, identity, and the role of outside influence. And what's happening in those streets, whether it's angry chants in Belgrade or banners in Bucharest, matter far beyond its borders. And it just so happens that, like Ukraine, these Eastern European nations seem to be the shield bearers for Western democracy.